Welcome, everybody. My name is Ben Peters. A great welcome from South Africa, Cape Town. Thank you very much for joining our IPMA Smarter Cities Special Interest Group. I'm the head of the IPMA Smarter Cities, and it's a great privilege to also share with you the Project Success webinar. From my side, if you have any questions to ask, please take note not to utilize the chat function. We have enabled the Q&A function in Zoom for you to be able to ultimately continue. Further to that, I would like everybody to please make sure that we only utilize the Q&A function. Otherwise, we won't be able to give you feedback on your questions. If you have any, you can ask questions at any time during the presentation and during the webinar, and we will attend to those questions right at the end. We will keep the webinar to 45 minutes max, Q&A included. And please take note that we try to also manage our time successfully. So what is the special interest groups? The IPMA special interest groups are an exploration of our areas of benefit in our careers, our work, and the planet. And we, as the special interest group members, strive to advance the industry, create new standards, networks with industry leaders, peers, find opportunities to growth, and more. The Smarter Cities Special Interest Group, ladies and gentlemen, it's all about achieving livability, sustainability, and workability via project, program, and portfolio management. I am very honored to also introduce the other global special interest groups that IPMA is presenting. And for more information, you can visit sig.ipma.world. We have 7 special interest groups that we are presenting via IPMA: mega projects, artificial intelligence, AI, smarter cities, innovation and change, smarter you, health, and smarter rural. For more information, ladies and gentlemen, please visit the IPMA.world website, and you're welcome to participate in any of these events. It is with a great pleasure for me to introduce to you our speaker for the day, Mr. Jorge Saraiva. He's got a master's degree in sustainable innovation from the cooperation between University of Minot and the UN University on Smarter Cities. Jorge has 20 years of IT experience. He's acting in the Smarter Cities arena since 2012. Very well known and with a lot of experience. He's a recognized expert on digital transformation and energy transition in the society. He is currently the acting Chief Innovation Officer for 360 Group, with a focus on energy transition for smarter cities. He's also the leading currently the EU Smarter Cities Marketplace Initiative. Further to that, previously, George found Engage Citizens, was the project leader of the Smart London, CTO of Twins, and the creator of the Dutch parking system using AI, and VP of US stock listed company Digital Towns that focus on digital transformation of local economies powered by blockchain. George will talk to us about the green transition today and how that relates into the space of smarter cities. George, very welcome. I'm glad to introduce you. You're welcome to share your screen, and we're looking forward to engage with you and learn more from you today. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Peter. It's a great honor to be on this event. First of all, I've been working with a few members of IPMA. Also, I met some of you, including you, Peter, in far land like Korea. So it's always a great pleasure to be in such an event. one of the main targets that we usually work is on I'm also president of something in Europe called the European Network of City Policy Labs. So and most of the findings and the goals that we are working in, reason of my main presentation is exactly this European Network of City Policy Labs, which is part of the European Union on smart cities. Now, recently, all units of smart cities in European Union have converged into a EU Smart Cities Marketplace. And of course, the European Network of City Policy Labs is one of the initiatives that focus on the governance and supporting the change to a better cities or a smarter city. The reason of my talk here is actually about the green transition, and the reason why I would like to talk to you is, of course, it starts by analyzing what is the green transition and why we need a green transition. It's very important that we find it out that the story until today, it's really a success story for mankind. If we look to the progress and if we make an introspection, we will find that we did have a good path in coming to here. Mainly after the World War II, and you can see the graphics in orange, all categories, we've been very successful, we as a mankind. And this is what we call the Anthropocene era, which means an era with a heavy influence of man. So in orange, we can see that, our wealth has grown a lot, considerably, mainly after World War II and mainly after the 50s, the 1950s of last century. So as you can see, every good aspect of life, every good aspect of evolution of a society, we did score very well, including, of course, our population, but including our GDP, our education, anything that you can have, less poverty and everything. So the result has been very good, but there's a price. If you see the impact.
Jorge,
yes.
Sorry to interrupt. If you maybe can just switch on your camera for us as well. Apologies.
Okay. I cannot because it's the host is stopping it. Still.
Perfect. You can continue. If you see that it's unblocked, then we will.
But you can see my screen sharing, right?
Yes, we can. Sorry for the interruption. You can continue.
Not a problem. So continuing very fast forward, of course, we all know that the human progress had a price on our Earth and our planet systems. And you can see it in everywhere. We have been a lots of big impact on carbon, a lots of big impact. Finally, I'm here. And a bigger impact on the biodiversity, and mainly what we're saying is that we've had crazy years of progress in humanity, but also very dangerous years on our planet, and these drive us to the biodiversity problem, right? So what it means is that if we continue our historical path, we will have a lot of problems of points of no returns and a lot of scarcity in our world. So we are using too many natural resources to provoke the wealth and conditions in our life, in our society. But of course, we have to choose now what is the movement or what is the future we want to build. If we want to continue business as usual, very soon, and I mean 30 years, 40 years from now, the scarcity will completely become our worst enemy. And every good results that we had as a society and every great achievements that we have done so far will probably not be possible. And that's talking about the next generation, our kids and our grandkids. So this is the dangerous part of what we're doing on the impact on biodiversity. Even if we try to do pretty much the same measures of today, it will have serious impact on the future generations. What we're doing so far is not enough. So the point is, we really need to make a big change. What we've done so far is that we're trying to create some kind of a green limit, some levels where you should not cross it. That is, for example, the Paris Agreement, where everybody signed up. And sometimes some countries decided not to continue to sign up because, yeah, the economy is not evolving so much. We also have the carbon auctions, and you also know that some countries are exporting carbon shares to other countries. So it's not really working in a way. More recently, European Union have launched the EU Green Deal, which I'll come back later. But these kinds of approaches of creating a green limit has one big problem. It is the world is not perceived as one. We do have another problem on when we're creating wealth, when we're creating progress, is that we are not creating the progress and wealth evenly distributed in the world. So there is a global inequality in living conditions. And this is being so far a kind of a playground for most businesses. You could export carbon for other countries, and that's something that's ridiculous because you're not focused on going to solution. But as you can see here, there is a huge difference between some countries in every ranks that you see. So if you have good scores on a global perspective, that's the average. But the way that we are doing, the way that our economic growth model that we learn from the universities actually is not working. It's not working on a global perspective. It's only working in some places. And the main approach is that we need to focus on this. We need to focus on moving the curve of poverty and slowing it down. So the point is, the big trend and big effort is that we have a more distribution of wealth. And this is important because we need to make a big comparison about the GDP growth of a country and the GDP growth of a person, a citizen. We need to be a more inclusive ecosystem, and probably we need to change, and I'll come back later, our capitalism system, a more distributed way. And that is the key pillars of what we call the sustainable development. So the main goal here, of course, is to have what Kate Raworth described as the donut economy. So we do have a green limit. So what we cannot make business in a way that jeopardizes the future and our planet, but we also need to have another intervention that is defining a socio-economic limit. So that creates like a kind of a donut. And when you create a socio-economic limit, that's now very popular in Europe. We decided, every city decides to say, what is our minimum living standards? And we need to make sure that everyone is included. And we need to also have equal rights, but also very important, equal responsibilities for every citizen that lives in our city. This is very important as a key pillar to make a just transition, a just green transition. But the fact is, the world doesn't need KPIs, as we can see it in donut economies. The world really needs is action. So instead of only talking about KPIs and limits, we need to define 5 steps that combines the green transition. So it's an action and it's executable roadmap that we need to make as an approach. This action needs to be have two boundaries. Cannot go any higher, any worse in impact on our planet, and that goes with the 1 gram of carbon and nothing more of increase, and it cannot go any lower on society impact, economical society living standards of people. In between this, we need to move from the model that cities are run and are equipped and they are evolving today to a future model. So the first step of these 5 steps of 5 stages of the green transition is actually the policy. It starts by defining a policy. This is done also, we are starting to do this now in European Union. So there is this big principle called the mission-oriented policy. So this green mission-oriented policy basically is a governance model. And the governance model starts by a simple way, which is, of course, using the mayor. And this mayor decides this local government decides what is the mission for the city and what are the KPIs. This is a mission-oriented. What it means as a mission-oriented, I give you the best example of the most successful mission-oriented ever. That was from the Kennedy president in US, when he said publicly that the United States will send a man and return, or send a man to the moon and safely return before the end of the decade. So this is exactly a kind of a mission statement that Kennedy said, hey, we're going to launch a man, he's coming safe, and we have a deadline for that. This is the starting point of the green mission-oriented policy. So when you do that, Kennedy or anyone in the American society in those times had a clue on how to make that happening. So many disciplines, so many different projects, so many areas of intervention, so many areas and disciplines that we were so late that it was not possible to do it, or nobody had a complete full picture in this vision. What happens is, of course, the society organizes and make mission approaches. It's exactly what is happening nowadays with the European Union on our green transition. We decided to make the Green Deal. The Green Deal is exactly the same tangible mission as Kennedy did. What we're saying in Europe, we're saying that we are going to be the first carbon neutral continent in the world by 2050. And we will reach halfway by 2030. So 10 years from now, 9 years from now. What is happening now is that everybody is organizing and proposing mission approaches to this big target. Some will say that let's reduce cars, so no more diesel cars to be manufactured. Some will say let's bet on renewables. Some will say let's create energy communities. All this is a big, large number of mission approaches that are being delivered. And of course, some way they are funding it. Please be aware that this is a transition. So it's very important to define, when you are talking about a city transition, means that most of the times the city already have fixed costs for a wrong system. And as a transition, we need to focus that these fixed costs on the wrong system, let's say carbon-based energy, can be used to drive a green alternative like renewable energies. So the city, the mayor can pay as much or even less or slightly less, and with that money support the intervention of new renewable alternatives. That's just one example. But this is exactly the way that it works. So when you launch a mission, you have different groups organizing them with different approaches. After the first round, you see which groups are scoring well, are contributing well, which have potential to contribute well, and which actually don't work. So when you go to future rounds, the groups are mixed. They are probably a good contribution, but not a solid group contribution, so they can be part of another mission approach. And the way it's very simple, it's public money, so you need to invest in where you get scores, where you have results, and that can go rounds and rounds until you have really only the best projects being involved. When you have a governance based on this mission-oriented policy, you are creating a complete different new society. Which means what? It means that in a city, you are moving from this traditional hierarchy where you have the mayor and you have all these teams and the council and all the council members. So this very hierarchy, very vertical pyramid based system to what is called now city oligarchy. Oligarchy systems are based on circles. And this is very important, and this was also one of big learnings from the way most governments dealt with the pandemic. You could see a lot of politicians trying to claim their stake on every decision. Even many decisions were about health, were about science, were about technology, and they don't know anything about it. So that's where we started to see that the politician should not be this top of the pyramid that gives the face and tries to have, but it should also decentralize the decision and the power to those that are experts. So if you look at this means if a city is going to be composed based on oligarchy systems, or meaning based on circles of expertise, this means you need project managers, and you need green project managers. You need project managers to manage the mission approaches. So project management as leaders of every approach is probably one of the big trends in the coming years. The second step is, of course, the green economy transition. If you don't have change the economic model, you will always have problems, and people will continue to say, I don't want to be part of the Paris treatment because my economy is not fit for it. We need to start another dilemma. We need to start focus on the next economic paradigm. And probably, and that's part of the European vision, if we, Europe, are leading in the green economic paradigm, then probably we won't be the economic leaders or superpowers in the next 20 years, but we may be the big economic superpower in 2050, because that's where we are fighting and that's where we are running to be ahead of it. So the sustainable development model, much before the others make the shift from the situation they are now and where they want to go. So what is the green transition economy? I always play, this is like the Olympics, right? So it's composed by 5 big areas. One, of course, is the circular economy. We need to focus on a better use of resources and reuse of resources, or recycling resources, and a better distribution of all the resources. Another one is, of course, you need to have ecosystems of resilience in cities. No matter what, we are already experiencing the climate change, and we're already experiencing a huge problems in there. Of course, we can use technology, but no matter what impact we reduce, we are going down the curve. So we need to have a resilience ecosystem. And by ecosystem, I'm not saying only about the cities and technology, but mainly about people and these circles of people that can group and be created and be informed to face any catastrophe or any problems in the resilience that the city may have. Most important of all, probably, is that a system can only work when everyone is accountable. And why I'm saying this is important, because people usually work on this paradigm of who are the beneficiaries. So we make a big work towards someone that is the beneficiary, or is a customer, or is the person in need. That is a wrong approach. We learned that. Now we need to focus on everyone should be on the table. I have a friend from London that says if you are not in the table of negotiations, then you probably end up in the menu. And that's exactly the main point. We need to make everyone accountable, and everyone has a responsibility on creating a better city. The population is growing tremendously and is going to continue to grow tremendously in the next years. So we need to focus on making these assets as part of the solution instead of part of the problem. Co-creation is actually the main issue here. So what we've done, also together with the United Nations, is that we are creating a model. So this model actually focuses on the resource planning. Those resources already exist. Whenever we're going to make a mission approach, which resources that exist that may support our mission. If there is any kind of resources that we need to have. The same thing with the technologies. Also, we need to focus on the behaviors. Are everybody accountable? Why should they be? How can we nudge them to change their behaviors towards what we need and make, of course, our benefit? But it's economy. So every investment should go to a cost structure, and also every revenue stream should go to our revenue stream, every block. And then we split. The projects should be managed in order to also to foster our economy and to make thriving local communities. So this is basically one of the models that the United Nations on smart cities combined with EU and our European network of policy labs are working as a working model for co-creation based on for every mission approach. Of course, this can only scale up, not because of technology, not because of influence of nice books. It can only scale up if we have, again, green project managers. The third step is, of course, energy transition. And energy transition is composed by three main stages. One is, of course, decarbonization. And the funny part about decarbonization is meaning what? Meaning moving our energy sources from those that pollute more to the sources that are green and more sustainable. But the funny fact here is that never before the energy source was so equally and evenly distributed. And this gives room to a lot of changes in the economical, societal, and also environmental ecosystems. Of course, before going that, we need to have the second stage of energy transition, which is digitalization. It's important that if we have different flows from the rooftops in our houses or from the wind or any other energy, and if you want to make possible to sell the energy you produce to your neighbors or to the rest of your community, or even to public electricity or to the electric cars from that park in the street, you need to digitize the system. You need to know, you need to have smart meters, you need to have a smart grid that knows who is consuming energy from whom. Only this way you are paving the way for the real higher level of energy transition, which is decentralization. Basically, in a short-term future, energy won't be provided or supplied by large corporations in the world, but probably will be supplied by your neighbor and other members within your community. And this decentralization means that we can have energy communities, we can have lots of new business models flowing and emerging on. And the beauty part of these business models is that they are distributed, they are accessible to a wider member of the community instead of just a CEO from a far land, a big, large corporation. That, of course, again, you can only give stages if you have a green project manager involved for the energy transition. The same thing goes for digital transformation. Digital transformation, basically, on smart cities is a new focus. If a city has composed, this is the smart city wheel from Boyd Cohen, a good old friend of mine, and that became very popular, and that's used in the rankings of who is the smartest city in the world. They use this ranking, but the point is, on top of this, we need to have a similar city in digital way. What I mean is very simple. We have this physical city with physical laws and physical transactions and shops and everything. We should also move all the businesses into digital. Failing on this is giving room to big corporations manage our city instead of us. And if you see, the entire world is becoming digital, and as far as you can see, most of the transactions are already in digital. Most of the commerce are already in digital. So the city that has this physical system based on local transactions and taxes on the buildings and on city taxes and things like that, actually they are losing space to digital because they are not replicating the same system model, physical model, into the digital twin. And of course, we have mapping what it should be and how we should do a system for a digital transformation of a city based on exactly the trends and the big dimensions that are now very popular on smart cities. But this is, again, a very hard, long-term transition process and transformation process from a city. And like all other previous phases, it requires a green project manager to support the entire process. Last but not least is, of course, innovation. All what we've seen in our phases is that there are mission approaches. People, society organize themselves, making proposals on how to achieve the city mission. You can also find the quadruple helix, or the academia working together with private companies, working together with governments, and even with citizens to innovate and to create solutions. We see energy communities. We see the blended finance models trying to invest on new ventures that's coming in the cities. But we also need some supporting phases. For example, many of the innovations that are coming, they are not 100% legal. We have situations in the worldwide when Uber, for example, wanted to implement it in cities, but that goes against the taxes and the tax system and license agreements that you have for taxes that Uber could not be compliant. So the thing there is, of course, you cannot close the door to evolution, but you need to regulate and support the evolution, because the main goal actually is not give a lot of money to a company from Silicon Valley, but is to make a thriving local communities. So you need to have some kinds of sandboxes, which is this protective environment, regulatory sandboxes, that you can start innovating in a protective way. So you are trying a new business model, you are trying a new urban tech model in a protected environment. It won't be damaging the existing structure that you have, but you are actually supporting and testing it until it gets the model and the product market fit as it should be, and then you may move it to the incubator to gain a market fit, and if it works, you should move it to an accelerator to become a business model or a society model or a green transition proof of concept. And when that happens, of course, they move to the next round of the mission approach. And if that, when all those rounds are very successful and finally you have a stable, mature model, you can even aspire to replicate to another city. And this is exactly the biggest advantage of sustainable innovation, that you do it one city at a time by matching local communities that have some similarities between it with themselves. And this is, again, only possible if it's managed by a very particular manager, which is what we call the Green Project Manager, that is focused on these 5 steps of the green energy. To keep it short, what I always say is that the green transition is composed by these 5 grades, 5 shades of green. And this is the most important part. Cities are really the place to implement these 5 shades of green transition model. And why? Because cities, they are only 1% of the land, of the surface, and they already represent 75% of the energy consumption. They have a carbon footprint of 70%. And yeah, they are growing and growing in the large, and probably more than half of the population will be living in cities in a very short time. And the main advantage of the cities is that the local governments don't really have so much legislation power, because the central government has more than that. So the local governments need to have the flexibility to negotiate and coordinate with their society to co-create. So holacracy systems are more potentially better to be implemented in cities than countrywide. And the same thing with green transition. It's the best that we started as policies on the cities, because that's where you get the most of the impact. And it's also because it's easier to control and to have the loop from the green policy to the innovation that requires to be adopted as a next future round of policy, and the circle repeats itself. But the most important for this call is the way we see it. The green transition is also the most important model. Those that will succeed faster and better in the green transition will be living a new paradigm, a future paradigm. And the first ones, like every big wave, like the Industrial Revolutions, the first ones to have a very tuned and efficient model of the new paradigm will be the most successful societies and countries in the future. We believe in Europe that is the way moving forward, and we're investing a lot on this. We call it Green Deal. It's our green transition purpose. And we believe that this will probably make it Europe be leading in the best or in the correct economic paradigm in the near future. Of course, for all these steps, and again, we need you. We need green project managers. Thank you.
George, thank you very much. Wow, very insightful. And I believe I can see there's 1 or 2 questions already. I would like to start with a question, and just ask a question with a focus that's currently on the green transition. And it's very difficult for the politicians to promote green transition, especially in poorer countries where they struggle to meet the basic services and human needs, such as accessibility of water, clean water, housing, safety, and the like. What do you think poor countries needs to do and what should they focus on in terms of green transition, especially with a focus on poorer countries?
Well, I think that there are always difficulties depending on the types of countries. It's not that straightforward when you also talk about rich countries. Rich countries have big, large corporations that they pretty much control everything, and they don't give you room for bottom-up approach. Right? That's not the case of poor countries. So I think that the poor countries, it's important that we start this concept of making everyone perceiving that they are accountable as part of the solution. They probably need to be guided. They probably need some project managers or project leaders, but the main focus is it's the people that need to start sitting down and discussing how can we solve our problems, right? And the amazing new world that I'm very optimistic, I'm always very optimistic about the new world, is that now, as I said, most of the problems that you also have the technology access, and you also have the information access enough for you to build a solution. So it's just a matter of organizing the communities towards the solution you want to see implemented. So that's something that the poor countries have on their favor that the very rich countries don't, because we have too many regulations and we have too many protective laws for the big, large corporations. You don't have that in poor countries. So the main thing here is, I always say, the poor countries should have a community-driven approach. I give you an example. It's a big city, it's a rich country, but it's a good example because I worked very close with them. It's something called Citizens UK. Citizens UK is basically a big association where they have only consultants or leaders like the project managers. And when there is a small community or someone within in the city that has a problem, then he wants a solution for it, and they call complaints about it to Citizens UK. Citizens UK pretty much what it does is sends a kind of a project manager, and then you approach this person, this complaining person, and say, okay, you have this problem. How many like you have this problem? And then it says, well, everybody, I mean, hundreds of people. Says, great. So let's get them together. Let's discuss them together. And from them, they evolved as making first a community, from one complaint to a community. Then, of course, the community starts thinking about what are the solutions, where we want to get, how can we get there. And of course, it will need money, it will need a lot of things, but then it's a different thing. And I give another aspect. It's very common that people complain only against the government, right? And of course, if you have a huge, large community that meantime have the same problems, they can complain with the government, they probably have power enough to be sponsored. But even if they are not, only looking to government is to look into the wrong direction. You always find companies, private sector, even academia with business, you can always find different materials from construction that you can use, and you can always build a solution. But the most important is that you start by one person complaining to make a big community complaining to make everyone accountable. And that community is going to build the solution. And if the solution flies, if it's a great solution, it's very easy to find in another city, in a neighbor city, exactly one person complaining, and then you can replicate the problem. And that's how you can create a change. I think the poor countries do have a golden opportunity. If you look to the world, most of the superpowers are fighting in the wrong direction. They don't want to decarbonize the economy. Their entire economy is based on decarbonizing. Their living standards is based on decarbonizing, right? So the ones that should make a shortcut and surpass the big economies are exactly the poor countries, because you can implement a new economic model. The wrong thing is, of course, knowledge. you need to know that you cannot make the same path of others. I mean, Europe is, sometimes our history is a few centuries longer than yours. So it did a lot of mistakes. You should not follow us because you are following our mistakes. You should shorten the evolution roads and go around our mistakes and go direct to the big results that we have achieved. And that's knowledge. It makes sense that sometimes you need to imitate those that are better, but they are not better for long. The shift is changing. And that's why I'm always trying to call the attention to focus on the project managers, on the green project managers. The green project managers are the ones that say, this is exactly what's interest, forget about the rest.
Thank you very much, Mihailo. Yes, the video will be available on the webinar. That's just a question, a general question. George, we've got a question from Mark Kaywood. What is understood as sustainable population for the planet? And what role does the management of population numbers play in green transition?
Well, I think that we need to perceive something. The population is going to grow tremendously, and we all know the numbers of what we're saying. We all know that around 2060 there will be living more people in cities that we have in the entire world today. So it's not only the population that is growing rapidly, but it's growing towards the cities, which is a smaller percentage of land that we have. So we do have a problem here. We don't have any longer this problem of industrial approach that you have people producing in the fields and transporting to the cities. Most of people will move into cities, so cities will become mega cities, and mega cities means that cities needs to do more things, needs to be more sustainable than they do it today. Sometimes cities are just consumers of lots of aspects. So people are the only factor that is a growing factor that's coming into cities, right? So it's the main thing that we need to say is if we maintain the governance model that we have today, which is the citizens are users and the governance are the service providers for those users. If you have this aspect like a client and a server or a supplier and a service provider and a consumer, if we have this approach, it's going to be wrong. That cannot live for the big number of people that we are getting, and we cannot stop it. So the population is going to grow whatever you do. So what we need to do is to adapt to this situation, and that means what? It means you need to empower people to become the solution. So it's no longer this service provider and user in the cities. It's something new called the prosumers. Prosumers is what? Is a producer and a consumer of the same thing simultaneously. And energy is the perfect example when we talk about that. You can produce energy in your roof. You can sell energy that you produce when you're not using to your neighbors, right? So it's a completely mind shift. So you are a consumer of energy, yes, but you're also producing of energy. And the future of people, considering the population growth, the future is going to force you that a person is not only one. That's industrial revolution mindset. A person is just focused on doing this same old thing all the days. That's not going to be the future of mankind. The future of mankind is that person that can manage the energy on the roof, that can manage the communities that they are doing on cultural, and they can manage lots of things and lots of more societal living. And that's what we're doing here. Most of these big principles of 15 minutes city, so people can have everything within a 15 minutes range, that is exactly moving towards community-driven cities, and that's to focus on empowering people as part of the solution. You are on mute.
Apologies, that generally happens quite a bit nowadays with this new virtual technology. I've got the final question for the day. It's from Tim Jakes, and he says there are so many core infrastructure challenges, from old subways, highways, energy grids, legacy economic systems built on carbon-based industries such as auto. The costs are enormous and the disruption is very large. What are the success stories of cities or countries that have addressed these challenges of updating the infrastructure while moving to the green vision?
Well, firstly, green vision, it still is something experimental. So what we find it out in Europe is that we don't know the solution itself. We need to test it and experiment in different ways. So here in European Union, we have a very successful project called Lighthouse Cities. What basically is Lighthouse Cities? Basically is that we funded 3 big cities to approach one topic in the 3 different approaches. So basically you have London and Lisbon approaching different areas. Those lighthouse cities will influence others to replicate according if they see what is the best match to their society. And that's how we are evolving in the lighthouse cities to very large programs, and mainly successes like energy communities are probably one of the most mediatized, because it goes the entire circle of the green change nowadays.
George, I see there's one more, and sorry, I would like to just answer this last question. How much is blockchain technology important in this transformation?
Well, my belief is vital. We do need a decentralized system for everything. We need to have decentralized communities and the distributed systems. The blockchain provides you the smart agreements and a decentralized approach. So everything that we are talking here, from the holacracy system that you have organizations based on circles, and then you have a direct flow of revenue distributing by the society instead of concentrating in one corporation. That requires that you have a transparent flow of sources. I'm not just including the money, but also the energy and all other kind of based resources that we are talking about it. To have that, you need to have smart contracts, and for that, blockchain is the only tool, because it's automatic and it's completely bulletproof to guarantee the transparency. The main point of this is that most of corporations and governments have been acting as the trust link between 2 parties. You can automate that with the blockchain, and now these 2 parties can work together in a more efficient way, because you don't have anyone standing in between and trying to take some revenue out of it. And that's blockchain in summer. So it's a trust relationship that is required to boost the next generation.
George, thank you very much. Very insightful, a lot of knowledge that you shared, making sure that there's emphasis on the green project manager. I'm sure it's something for everybody else that joined this webinar today to think about. There's a lot of project professionals in this in today's webinar, and I'm sure that they will also start thinking about how can you get green competences into your individuals, aligned to what IPMA is driving from a competency perspective into the world of our project professionals. For the participants, you can claim your CPD points and the proof of participation. If you please apply for that on the IPMA website. To apply for it, please enter your full name and your surname into the current Q&A or in the chat point, so that we have your names. We will keep this webinar open up to about for another 5 minutes. So if you want to claim anything, please just share your details so we can share a certificate with you so that you can ultimately move forward and attend. Before I close the session, I would just like to invite everybody also to the IPMA World Congress, which starts next week. If you haven't registered, please go to the website. It's in St. Petersburg if you would like to travel, and if you are allowed to travel. Some of us are still not allowed to travel, and it will be a virtual session. So it's a hybrid approach that will be presented this particular year. Quite excitement, very good speakers in that space, as well as the gala dinner, which will also be shared on a virtual platform. And once again, finally from my side, Jorge, Saraiva, much appreciated. Great opportunity for us to engage with you. All the best of luck, and to my participants, have a great day for the rest of the day. Goodbye.
It was all my pleasure. Thank you, Ben, for the invitation. Hope to see you in the GPMA, so Green Project Manager Association, in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you very much.